All right, welcome back to Smut and Study Podcast. This is Amanda.
I'm Natalie, and today we are going to talk about why we read dark romance and why we read fantasy and how we kind of got into that genre and why we love it so much. And I kind of think that fantasy, it's just, real world really kind of sucks. You go to work, you come home, So fantasy is definitely like an escape, and the characters are just their lives are so amazing and you want to be them and you want to be a part of their world, and they're so complex that I feel it's easy and hard to relate to them, I think, in certain ways, but it definitely kind of immerses you in that type of universe and that type of world. And I mean, who doesn't like spicy scenes? Because we all like spicy scenes. But yeah, so today we're just gonna kind of talk about both of them and give you some book recommendations. If you're new to reading and want to immerse yourself in some fantasy and dark romance, dip your toes in the dark romance world, I guess.
Hopefully, we can convince you by the end of this video why to read fantasy.
Hopefully.
I feel like I like reading fantasy books because, like you said, it's like kind of like a break from like reality.
Yeah.
I like go to work, I deal with patients all day, and then the last thing I want to do is like come home and like, I don't know. It's nice to like open the book and be like, oh, this has nothing to do with real life,
Yeah. I also agree. I think that's why we don't like regular romance books, because I think that it's still a little bit too close to home, as far as it's almost like watching a Hallmark movie where it's just kind of like they still have jobs and it might be spicier and that sort of situations, but it's still a little close to real life. And I think fantasy, it just any book that has a map at the front of it is going to be a good book.
Anything with pictures or like something explaining like what you're getting into, like all these like weird little creatures.
Yeah. It's so true. Like things that you actually don't know how other people came up with them in their brain using their imagination, or even just the world in general. But I mean, who wouldn't want to be like a badass, like fighting bitch? And like a queen, or whatever, or just gets rescued by a warrior or a fae, or I mean, come on.
I mean, I think too, like if you like kind of like, I like Marvel and I really enjoyed Game of Thrones, so like jumping into this is kind of like that, but better. Because you get to read like the actual background of what like these people are thinking, rather than watching a TV show or a movie where you just see like the surface. But that's what, I don't know. Game of Thrones, definitely. I didn't want to watch that at first because I totally was like,
I still haven't watched it.
Ew, I'm not watching this. I think I watched the first episode twice or probably 3 times. I literally was like, this is so stupid. But then I actually like got into it, and then just reading like one fantasy series, it reminded me of Game of Thrones. Yeah. And I was like, I like this shit, but it's better.
You really get attached to the characters. You really fall in love with the characters, even though they're not real at all. You relate to them. And I think that's also the very weird thing, is that you read characters and, they're going through hard times, or they go through traumas, or they do this, and you're like, wow, like I relate to that in my modern kind of situations. And it's just, I think it's all about escape. And
and you also could like picture the characters how you want to like picture the characters.
You get to use your imagination. It's like being a kid
again. I just wanted to say that. I also saw something earlier. I think it was a shirt on Etsy that was like, I still read fairy tales, but now they're just spicy.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
that's what it is. That's really what it is. I mean, I don't know why reading spicy is so good, but it is. I just don't.
All right. So why do you read dark romance?
Let's see. Well, dark romance is just a dirtier version of, I guess, fantasy smut, because there is dark romances that are still kind of fantasy, like they're not, everyday sort of situations, but I still think it's like escapism. I think it's like a reality that, okay,
will never happen in your life.
Never happen, and you're like, okay, in real life, this man would go to jail, but he's not a cheater, so it's okay, Like he killed for her. That's hot.
And they like somehow cover up like all these murders, and you're like, how in the hell? Like,
it's always men that are like own businesses or like are millionaires, and they're just like some secret society, or they're just low-key geniuses, and then they're going about their life, and then they meet this girl, and sometimes like enemies to sort of lovers, where they're like, oh, I hate her, and then he's like obsessed with her, or it just starts off where, you know, they're just obsessed from the very beginning, and you're just like, yes, I love every second of it.
I also enjoy, like, I know this is going to sound so weird, but I love opening, like, a dark romance and reading all the trigger warnings, because I'm like, I, like, laugh as I'm, like, reading them. I'm like, oh, my God. And it's always, like, at the bottom of the page, it's like, if you feel uncomfortable with any of this stuff, you probably shouldn't read this book. And it just like makes me laugh, because I'm just like,
plus book, you're like, oh, okay.
I was like, you got me on these. You got me. Now I have to read it.
If it doesn't have a page and a half of trigger
warnings,
it's not good enough. If you're not confused by some of the trigger warnings, it's not good enough. Because like, there's a lot of books that I read and I'm like, I have no idea what that is.
Me too. I literally have to Google it. Because I'm like, what is this? And then I'm like, I probably shouldn't have Googled that on my phone.
It's on the search history. You're on a list somewhere.
If anything ever happens to me, it's because they freaking like hacked into my Google search and they're like, why is she looking that up?
You're like, that's suspicious.
Yeah.
I don't really know. I think dark romance is a little bit harder to describe, honestly, because fantasy, I mean, there's fantasy movies, there's all sorts of fantasy books that don't even have to involve like smut, like you think of like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, like amazing fantasy books. So I feel like that's easier to sell to people. The just fantasy books that we're reading are just books written by women, so the men are just what women want. I guess they're just it's what women want in men, versus like a man writing a book and they just like skip over the scene because they don't really care. But women care about that stuff. We want like, I want to read 3 pages of foreplay in a book. Like that's just how it is, but a man doesn't. But I feel like dark romance is a little bit harder to, I don't know.
This is how I would describe dark romance.
It's harder like to stand my ground and be like, you should read dark romance because it offers you nothing but spice, but spice and pleasure. It does nothing for you. It's not, I don't know.
It reminds me of like the show Dexter, because like most of the people there just like killing people. Like if you like all that like sci-fi like thriller like type stuff, I feel like dark romance is your stuff, but there's just a lot of smut.
That's a good that's good. It's like a thriller, but just with a lot of sex.
Yeah. Which I feel like some thrillers have that.
It's like suspenseful. They're like killing people. They're like hiding bodies. Yeah. Like something happens to the girl, something happens to the guy. You think someone's gonna die. Like it's suspenseful, but they're just fornicating every chapter. They just have time because, you know, it's not real life.
Yeah. But like I feel like I like dark romance just because of the fact something just fell off of this. I like it just because like I love Halloween. I love like dark scary stuff. Like I said, like the thriller like type movies and books. It's interesting, and then you're always like sitting there like, what's gonna happen? Yeah. And I mean, it's the same thing for any book that you pretty much read, fantasy, dark romance. You're always wondering what's gonna happen. But it's just, I also actually, after reading Quicksilver, I like opened the book and it was like, oh, a dark fantasy romance. And I was like, oh, so we got the two together. Even better, you know.
You're like, I'm winning in life. This is a fantastic.
Yeah. I was like, this is gonna be a good book.
You're like, Davey. That's one book recommendation.
So now we're gonna say like what books we think would be good to get you into the fantasy dark romance world.
Yeah. I mean, I think at this moment everyone should know that my suggestion would be ACOTAR, and it would be the Sarah J. Maas series, because I just think she is a fantastic writer. But next would be Fourth Wing. The 3rd book is coming out, but there's only 2 so far. It's not a huge commitment. Yeah. Sarah J. Maas, you're kind of getting into like a 16 plus book world, which when you start getting into it, you become obsessed. But Fourth Wing's a little bit easier, and it's really cool because it's about dragons. Like it's a really good fantasy world.
And fairies.
Dragons and fairies. It's a really good fantasy world.
That's what I started with, and it was nice because it's like with I remember she
not too
recommended
much.
ACOTAR, and I literally was like, girl, you want me to go into like this 16 book like spiral right now? Like I haven't picked up a book in I don't know how long. So then she was like, yeah, maybe try Fourth Wing.
I didn't even know I could read.
I know. I was like Pharaoh pretty much.
Oh, but just illiterate. I can barely
Oh my
write.
gosh, so with with Fourth Wing, like some of the names in there, I was like, girl, what in the hell?
You're just like, when I'm reading and I can't really pronounce a name, I definitely like just like mumble it in my brain and keep going. And I think if someone were to ask me to pronounce this out loud, I'd be like, I don't know.
And like there's some book series
I don't really care. I don't really
There's some book series where I'll read the whole book and then I find out like the actual pronunciation of the word and I'm like, well, that's stupid.
Yeah, I liked my version better. But anyway, so I think
continuing on.
We get off topic. It's fine. So I definitely think the Sarah J. Maas books, Fourth Wing, Crowns of Nyaxia series is another good one. The Caraval series. The list is
there's so many books.
The list is honestly endless. The Powerless series.
Oh, that was a good one.
Yeah.
That's like a fantasy without like it's mostly enemies really to lovers.
Yeah. It's more like they have really good banter, like the sarcasm and the back and forth is what kind of keeps it going. There's really not a lot of like spiciness in it, but because it's so just like I hate you, but I don't really hate you.
Yeah, it's a cute book for like younger like audience
balance off each other sort of situations. So that one was still really good.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. I read the first book took me a little bit to get through just because I was like, where's the spice? But the other two I like read like in a day. I was like, oh, this is easy. I like this book a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, the list goes on and on for fantasy books. But
I also feel like if you just start with one of them and then do any sort of research, or if you're on like the Goodreads app like we are, it just opens a world. Like your TBR will just become endless. Like I think every single day I probably get on the internet or get on Goodreads and somebody has like I want to read this book and I've never heard of it, and then I read the synopsis and I'm like, oh, I also want to read that book. And so it just keeps growing. But those are some definitely good books to start with that I think will really get people hooked.
And then in dark romance, I don't know, if you're scared of a dark romance and you're the person that reads the trigger warnings and you're like, okay, maybe I shouldn't read this thing, or you get easily offended.
Then it's not for you.
Yeah,
if you want to try, if you want to like dip your toes in the water of dark romance, I think you should start with like The Haunting and Hunting.
I feel like
Butcher and Blackbird was also a good one because
the
banter was good. It was like a funny dark romance. Like you're like, haha, but it was still a dark romance.
Yeah.
So those books, definitely. I haven't read Lights Out, but you have.
Which was hilarious. I listened to that on audiobook and I definitely recommend it. It was like Golden Retriever male and it's funny.
Oh, cool.
It's really funny. Yeah. And the audio was great.
But I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, I like that one. And Butcher and Blackbird was really good because it just jumped right into like there's really with dark romance, there's kind of like no story building like fantasy. You know, it just kind of
the story isn't that big.
Yeah.
In a sense. Like it's just kind of a lot of times like half the book they're just doing stuff.
Yeah.
And then near the end all this dramatics happen and then you're like, oh my God, what's going on?
But if you like dark romance and you want to dive deep, Lord series is definitely one that will I listened to that on audiobook too, and I don't know how I felt about it in the very beginning.
Yeah.
It's kind of a lot.
I felt
but it's great after I read all of them.
I read Haunting and Hunting, and then I just kept hearing about like the Lord series, and again, like I had no idea. And I read like the first book and it was a lot. It's a lot. And so I will say that like the trigger, like it is just it's real dirty. There's a lot going on.
It's very dirty.
It's very, very dirty. It's every other chapter. Things are happening in various places.
I literally she read it before me and I literally texted her and I was like, yo, is there a plot? And then once it got to the middle of the book, I was like, okay, there's a plot.
Then there's like a plot, but it's just, it's very, and I felt so bad because she had asked me, and I think it was like on the second or third book, and you would ask me, and I was like, oh yeah, like you should, and she decides to listen to it, in her car, and I don't even know if I could have done that, because there's a difference between like reading it in my own voice and hearing like a male in the audiobook like say these dirty things to you, kind of.
Yeah.
And she had texted me and was like, I don't know, I think this might be too much for me. And then it was like 2 days later, and she was like, never mind, I love it.
Yeah. Especially, I think it was the third book. Whoever the audio guy is for the third book, good job. Good job. I'm just going to put that out
Whoever
there.
you are.
You really, really made me like sing. Was that the third or the fourth book? Oh,
know.
fourth book. The fourth book.
Yeah, it was.
But like you made me like that person.
I did not listen to the audiobook, but she did have me listen to like
to
2 or 3 sentences of whoever does the voiceover for Saint. And yeah, his voice was wow.
The only thing I would say about like listening to a dark romance on the audiobook is for some reason the Audible app will like open it up when I go in my car and my phone connects, and like I just remember like getting in the car one day and my fiance gets in the car, and then all of a sudden like I turn the volume up because I always jam out, and it's just like all this dirty smut coming through the thing, and I'm just like screaming, I'm like, la, 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 and he's like, what? I'm like, nothing.
You see those funny videos when it's like when you get in a car wreck and you're just unconscious, but your dirty audiobook is like still playing on like the scene of the accident. That's all
that would be me. Literally, they'd be like, what was she listening to at 6 a.m. on the way to work? Like,
yeah, 6 a.m. on the way to work. That's a way to wake up. That is a way to really start your day, honestly. It's the best way, I think. But I've not listened to any audiobooks. I should really.
You should. It's actually nice because it's like
do that.
You could get stuff done while you're actually listening to it too. But like for me, like I'm a travel nurse, so I was driving an hour every morning pretty much to work. So I'm like,
we had a lot of time.
How many times am I going to listen to the same country song over and over every morning? You know what I mean? So it was like, listening to the books on Audible was really nice. I don't know, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But Haunting and Hunting, that was a really good story too.
Yeah, that had a good story, and it had enough spice where I think that if you read those books and you thought that was enough, and or you didn't really like it, don't go anywhere near Lords. Just don't. If you thought Hunting and Haunting was too much or too dark, or you just didn't really like it that much, don't touch Lords, don't look at Lords, don't go near
and
Lords.
Then if you did not like Lords, do not move on to Little Liar or Little Stranger because it gets weirder. It was still good, but it got a little weird. But we like the weird.
Says something about our mental state on multiple levels.
I feel like every time we both read a dark romance and we're like waiting for the other one to be like, hopefully they don't think I'm that weird.
It's like we listen and we don't judge.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's always our recommendations. But now I think we're kind of past that. Like I feel like after the Lord series and all this stuff, like I don't really see any dark romance where either one of us at this point would be like,
I don't think I can read it.
I can take it. I'm like, no.
But skipping to dark fantasy romances, Quicksilver, like we said before, I love that book, and that book was so hyped up on TikTok. I had to go and listen to the audiobook. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Definitely do it.
It's actually worth the hype because I feel like sometimes
it was good.
I feel like sometimes book talk kind of like burns you, or it really gets like your hopes up because people are posting videos and they're like, this is the best book ever written and blah, blah, blah. And then you read it, and I think it's hard when you read like Sarah J. Maas and then you kind of read something else and you're like, this was like...
It was okay.
It was okay. Even though I rate everything like 4 stars. Because I'm easily entertained and I easily cry and easily get angry and the same plot over and over again.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what dark romance is a little bit too. I feel like fantasy, a lot can happen, but I really like the enemies to lovers. But the dark romance, you kind of know, like, we all know why we're here. Like, we all know what's going to happen. It's not anything, like, crazy. And so,
another book I would
just think I really like it.
I just finished Phantasma, which, in the beginning, I told you, I got the audiobook version of it because, like I said, internet blows it up. Oh my gosh, it's the best audiobook, blah, blah, blah. I think I got used to listening to the audiobooks to where it's like the male is a male narrating
Yeah.
the guy, and then there's a female narrating the girl, which like I really like that.
Yeah.
And this book wasn't like that. Like the narrator did a really good job, but like it was all her. And I don't know why. I just don't like when they're like making like a tough male note. Hold on. I feel like I have to
wait. Bless you.
Oops.
Wait. So the female was doing the male voice too?
Yeah, so it's like, get over here. You know, like
no,
like to me, I kind of was like,
it's so weird.
I feel like I've read more advanced like books where like obviously the male and the girl, and with Quicksilver, like both of those people who played or narrated the book, like the guy did like a bunch of different guy impressions. Like he did like a Scottish accent, and like he did Kingfisher, like really good.
Just really talented.
Yeah, like
you come from reading something like that, and then you're
and then I went to that one, but that book was actually really good. Like in the beginning, I was kind of like,
on my TBR.
What the heck? Because like I said, it's like a dark fantasy romance. But then when I like first was listening to the book, it was like, oh yeah, this takes place in New Orleans, and I'm like, that's not fantasy. I'm like, where's this alternate like reality? But like, it was really good.
Yeah,
really good.
I'm currently reading the Guild series, so I'm on book 3, and it's like that freaking thick. So I'm making my way. So I haven't gotten to Lights Out or the other book yet, because now I'm on this journey, because this book this series has 6 books. So.
But if you guys have any book recommendations for us, or like any books you want us to read and cover, that would actually be nice for us, because then it'd be like a little challenge to read the books. So
definitely give us your input. If you do take our recommendations and you read it, let us know if you like it, if you hate it.
Also, we listen and we don't judge. So hopefully, if you do read the Lord series,
you don't judge.
You don't judge either.
Yeah, please don't. Please don't. I don't know. Oh gosh. But anyways, thanks for listening, you guys. And I hope we'll see you watching us on the next episode. And just let us know if you like this video and give us any recommendations, comments. We love to hear from you guys, okay?
All right. Thanks.
Bye.